to a place where we rise, where we grow. Stories of courage the world needs to know. With Liz Smalley, we lift every voice. Educate, validate, advocate, celebrate.
Welcome to the Thriving with Autism podcast, where we talk about all things autism and life beyond diagnosis. So today I'm going to be talking about the mental load. Now, we've probably all heard quite a bit about the mental load as mums and parents trying to organise kids and get them to school and to other activities. But when we have a child or children who are autistic, the mental load is actually greater. So often mums tell me that they're sort of wondering, why can everybody else seem to be able to do this and keep up, and I just can't? My life's not that different from other mums who are running their kids around to sports and taking them to school and play dates. Well, that's not quite right. And I think sometimes we're a little bit harsh on ourselves, thinking that we're the same as everybody else. But actually, we're not. We have a lot more things to do and a lot more things to juggle. There's more balls up in the air for us as mums to autistic kids. Now, there's an additional complication that comes in when you might also be autistic or have ADHD. That just adds another layer of mental load and complexity, because you're also maybe organising your own appointments to manage yourself, or you might be organising more than one child. So the mental load is a lot greater. And then when we add into that, we've got extra therapy appointments for 1, 2 or more kids, maybe our own therapy appointments. But then we've got all the other stuff that goes with neurospicy families and parenting. And that includes things like, do you have everybody's safe food? And are they still the safe food today? So I've heard lots of stories where mums have gone and bought truckloads of 2-minute noodles because they're the safe food, only to find out a week later that your child doesn't like 2-minute noodles anymore for whatever reason. They've just gone off them. And there you are with a truckload of 2-minute noodles, and nobody's going to eat them now. So, you've got that to manage as well. You've got safe foods. Now, what about going out places? If you're like me, you're sort of always looking for risks and scanning for danger and preparing ahead. Oh, what's going to be there? Like a simple trip to the shops. Okay, how hard is it going to be to get in the car? How hard is it going to be to keep everybody's seatbelt on? And how hard is it going to be to get out of the car, maybe into a trolley, into a shop, and get out again with everything on your list and get home with no tears, no disruption to your routine, and actually having everything you went to the shops for. If you're like a lot of parents, you might have just ditched the trolley and got the heck out of there because it was just too overwhelming for your kids, or maybe for yourself, or maybe both actually. So, in terms of mental load, we're juggling a lot more than parents of neurotypical kids. Yeah, sure, I get that that's still a lot of work, but they don't have the additional concerns of all the therapy appointments, your NDIS funding, what other people think of you, the constant criticism or, side eyes that you tend to get because you're, spoiling your child, or, if you just gave them a good smack, that would totally belt the autism out of them. I'm sure some of you have heard that, maybe from grandparents who are just not on board. So what brought this up for me, interestingly, was that one of our grandkids came to stay, and we always, pick movies that the kids like when they're with us. And our granddaughter chose the movie Yesterday. We hadn't seen it before. I had heard of it. And so we started watching it. And, I was actually really struck by the amount of effort that this mum was putting in with 3 kids, all typical, but 3 kids trying to get everybody to everything all the time. It was quite hard work. And at one point, she expressed incredible frustration because she had all these appointments scheduled and activities scheduled, and her husband forgot. And she said, "How can you not know about this appointment when it's on this beautiful chart I made on the fridge, and you go to the fridge 10 times a day and you haven't even seen it?" And worse than that, I think the underlying idea is, wasn't my job interview important enough for you to remember? It was something about me and you forgot. So this is something that parents are up against all the time. I think in many ways we're actually overscheduled, we're overstimulated, and we've got too much going on. And that includes, this is tricky, that includes even good things. Sometimes we can be overscheduled even with good stuff. Sure, learning a musical instrument is a fantastic idea. So is playing a team sport. So is playing an individual sport. So is having therapy. So is visiting your grandparents and visiting the family and trying to keep up with friends and buy food. They're all good things, and they're all, some of them are necessary. Obviously, food's necessary. But sometimes the choice between good and bad isn't the difficult choice. The difficult choice is between good and best. And sometimes best is to say no. We're not doing the thing. It's just too much. And I'm not going to put myself or my kids through that, even though it's a good thing. We're just not doing it. We've got other things going on. And sometimes the way to cope with this incredible burden in our brains with all the things we have to do is to actually chop a few out. So sometimes, we're always looking to add things. It seems in our society, we want to add this, add that, add the thing to the cart, add the activity, it'll be good, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes, to manage our stress, we need to be making some subtractions. Take some things away, enjoy the things you're doing, and just do less things. More isn't always better. So, what happened to this mum in the movie? Well, her son filmed her and made a video that he shared with the class that his mother was a monster, and it caught multiple moments where she was losing her temper, having a meltdown, shouting at everybody, having the big, ugly, shouty face. And all those clips put together that he'd caught really did make her look like a monster. But what I saw was somebody who was overwhelmed and dysregulated themselves. I know we talk a lot about kids' regulation, but you know what? Our kids are going to struggle to regulate if we don't regulate ourselves. And to be honest, we can't teach what we don't know. So learning to regulate ourselves is really important. And that's sometimes where the idea of a subtraction instead of an addition comes into play. So the mental work is all the invisible work we do, the things that are not written down, like knowing your kids' favourite foods or their safe foods, knowing that they like their shoelaces tucked in a certain way, knowing that they won't go to bed in that bed unless the bed covers are perfectly smooth. That was one of my kids. Another one of my kids, they wouldn't go to bed unless all their rugs were made into a nest, and they would sleep in the nest that they'd made on their bed. So knowing all these little nuances of our kids, it's all stuff that we carry and that we have to remember. And maybe not everybody's remembering that, or maybe they don't know that because there's so much going on. And we end up being, case managers, counsellors, advocates, and always putting the kids first. We're up at the school saying, hey, this is not working. Why aren't you doing the thing? Advocating, and then getting all that pushback that you only get when you're sticking up for your kid. And the load can get quite heavy. There's lots of appointments and the calendar can fill up really quickly. There's also the financial pressure, and I don't know that this is, talked about often enough, but many families that I talk to have ended up homeschooling. And yes, they're willing to do it and they're happy to do it, but it wasn't necessarily their choice. They maybe do need the money from a second job, but they cannot risk their child's mental and physical well-being by sending them to school to an environment that seems almost designed to antagonize and destroy them and completely damage their nervous system, where they're just so dysregulated. School is just not an option. There's meltdowns before school, there's meltdowns after school with the transitions, and then all the struggles of actually being at school. And a lot of parents can't work because even though they're trying to support their kids to go to school, often kids don't last the whole day. They get a call to come and pick them up, or they don't go every day. They might only be able to cope with maybe 2 days a week, maybe less. So many parents end up having to give up their job to support their child. And this does lead to financial stress sometimes, and also maybe a little bit of envy because you see the other families, mum and dad are both working, the kids go to after school care and they're happy about it. Then they do stuff all weekend and then go back to Monday and do it all again. For many of us, that's just not an option. We can't do all the things, and our kids can't do all the things, and we love them and we adapt to their needs, but it does create some financial sacrifice. What about the physical exhaustion? Running around to all these appointments, trying to do school, trying to advocate. It is actually exhausting physically, but also mentally. And I think sometimes when we're mentally tired, our body feels tired as well. And if you throw into the mix, you might have a kid that won't go to bed, or maybe they go to bed, but they won't stay there. They might go to sleep, but they don't stay asleep, or they're getting up really, really early. This all disrupts your sleep. So, on top of everything else, you're sleep deprived, and that can make it just that much harder to cope with the stress of raising the kids. Another burden that we carry is guilt. I don't know about you. Do you ever feel guilty that you're just not doing enough? You're not trying hard enough. Everybody else seems to be doing this. If you just tried a bit harder, maybe things would work out better. Well, you know what? That's not actually the truth. You are trying hard. It's just really difficult and it's so easy to feel guilty. And I think society helps with piling the guilt on. What if you wanted to have a career and now you're homeschooling with somebody who just either doesn't want to or can't learn, or it just doesn't work for them? Not only are you financially hard pressed, but you also lost your hopes and dreams of what you thought your life was going to be like. Maybe you thought you'd be working full time, dropping the kids off at, daycare and then dropping them off at after school care, and your life would carry on. But for us, with our kids with autism, this often isn't the case. And if we can hold on, maybe for a few years, it doesn't usually last. There comes a breaking point where it becomes too much. And sometimes we can feel guilty for longing for those things that we had wanted before. We weren't wrong to want them, and it's sad that they're gone. So this brings up another thing of complicated grief, where we absolutely love our kids. We absolutely love them. But we also miss what our life might have been, and we feel sad about it sometimes, and then we feel guilty about it because there are people worse off than you. But that doesn't make up for it. It just piles on the guilt. And it is really hard letting go of your hopes and dreams and what you thought your adult life would be like. And it's just not. It's a struggle. It's a financial struggle, parenting struggle. You can end up isolated and then feeling guilty for wanting different things. You might feel guilty for wanting a full night's sleep and just wishing your kids would go to sleep for a whole night. You might feel guilty for just wanting to go to Macca's and eat in, but it's not something you can do. Other people are doing this, but you're not. And while we willingly give up these things that everyone else is doing, sometimes it still hurts and we can feel a little bit guilty for looking at what we wished we had or what we had hoped for. It's probably not going to happen now, and it's okay to feel sad about that. And we don't need to feel guilty about it. I think society just piles it on mums anyway, but when you have a child with additional needs, it's just piled on all the more. And we end up with this sort of burden of needing to become a warrior hero. We have to go to war. If you haven't figured that out yet, let me tell you, we are at war. We need to fight and advocate for things for our kids and for ourselves sometimes. And it wasn't necessarily what we'd planned. And we end up having to be a warrior because we're fighting. And we also have to be a hero, like, oh, this is great. I love doing this. I'm going to save the day. But it doesn't always feel like that. Some days you just wish it wasn't like that. It doesn't mean you don't love your kid, you don't love your family. It just means it's really hard and it'll be nice to have a day off sometimes. But that's not usually what happens. What about the strain that it puts on the whole families? If you've got one child that's annoying your other kids and starting fights and just doing things, everybody seems to be at each other's throat, and you just feel like a total failure as a parent because you just can't seem to work it out. And it's very difficult when one of the kids, this is what happened in our family, our son was obsessed with his younger sister and he just would not leave her alone. And the torment continued from when she was about 6 until she actually left home early to get away from it. We just couldn't stop it. We couldn't leave them alone in a room together. He would attack her, pull out chunks of her hair. He's thrown knives at her. And if I wanted to go to the loo, I had to ask her to go and climb the tree out the front so that she would be safe, because she was a better climber than our son and he was a pretty darn good climber. So they were quite high up the tree. But look, when you got to go, you got to go. And that's what we had to do. You know, that makes it really hard and it puts a strain on the relationships in the family. And, you know, if you have a partner, if you're dysregulated and stressed out and trying to manage the kids and you've given every last drop of yourself that you have, and then a partner also has needs and wants. They might want to talk to you. They might want to have sex. I mean, when are you going to have sex when you're co-sleeping with your kids? How's that ever going to happen? It's really difficult to maintain a friendship. Maybe you just want to have a conversation that's not interrupted by, stop that, hang on, I've just got to go and, you know, rescue somebody, or stop them, you know, jumping off the roof or whatever it is. But the constant interruptions and the inability to have that connection with a partner, especially when you're already exhausted and you feel like you've got nothing more to give, and then somebody else, you know, fair enough, as a partner, it's reasonable. They want a little piece of you as well. And you've just got nothing. You might be all tapped out. A lot of kids who are sensory seeking are often climbing all over you. They just will not get off you. They're stroking your hair. They're squishing into you. They're bumping into their brothers and sisters for the sensory stimulation. And then by the time your partner maybe wants to give you a kiss and put his arms around you, you're like, seriously, just don't touch me. I have absolutely had enough for the day. So it puts a real strain on your relationship, and you need each other because you can't do this alone, although many people are, and it's really hard. It can be very difficult to maintain a healthy relationship with a partner when there's all this other stuff going on and your body is in a constant state of alert. It's very difficult to relax and have a nice chat and connect, because when we're dysregulated, we have a lot of trouble connecting, and it leaves people feeling lonely in their relationships. And it's not how it's meant to be, but it's definitely how it is sometimes. So what can you do? Well, you can seek support. So One of the best places to start, I think, is to get into some of these Facebook groups with other parents and hear what is working for other parents, find out who's a safe person to see, maybe a safe paediatrician or a safe speechy or OT, because we're really looking for safe people. You can get good recommendations, local recommendations in those groups. You can also see that even though you feel like you're the only one going through this, you're actually not. And it can help normalise some of your struggles and help you to think, yeah, I'm not a failure. This is actually really hard and there are other people experiencing this. So I think Facebook groups can be a great place to start, and they're also free. So, best price ever. What about practicing self-compassion? Now, I know that's a bit fancy and seems unrealistic, but perhaps you can try and think of something, some little kindness that you can do for yourself. So I'm going to show my age here and say that there used to be a soap ad that talked about having a little bit of luxury every day by using just some nice soap. I found that just having some nice perfume that I like that I could use every day was that little bit of luxury and a little bit of a treat for myself. Look, let's be honest, it's not the answer to everything and it's quite superficial, but there are those rituals that you can build into your life where you say, squirt, squirt, I deserve this. I'm worth it. And just that daily reminder can be helpful. Another thing that I found helpful was to just always have nice underwear. It's just another way to say to myself, yeah, I'm worth it. I don't always have to have the crappy stuff. I can have nice underwear. So just a little bit of luxury every day, a little moment every day where you say, I'm worth it. It will be something different for everybody, but it's a really good start. Just one little tiny reminder every day. Maybe you put lipstick on. Whatever you like that reminds you that you're worth it. Maybe you sit in the car for an extra minute to hear the end of your favourite song. It's whatever's going to work for you. And look, these are tiny bite-sized things. Yeah, sure, you can go to therapy. That's quite tricky. It's expensive. And who's going to look after the kids? And maybe starting therapy is just overwhelming because it's too big. But you can start small and you can build on that. So one thing that helps a lot of people is also having reminder systems. So especially if you've got ADHD yourself, you're not going to remember everything. I mean, even neurotypical people wouldn't be able to remember everything that you're doing. But having a system for reminders, so this might be setting your phone, using your calendar and putting it, programming it to go off and give you the reminders that you need. Maybe the day before, then half an hour before, then 10 minutes before. Like, put plenty of reminders in your phone so that you're not missing things. And if you write them down or you put them somewhere into your system, then you don't have to keep holding them in your mind, and it frees up a little bit of space in your brain. If possible, it's really important that you try to give yourself a break. I know it's really hard. So some of the options might be, it's called short-term accommodation in NDIS terms, or in their old-fashioned terms. It used to be called respite, where kids would go and stay somewhere else that was set up for them. It was safe. They would have plenty of staff on, and you could just have a break. You could drop them off, have a break, and then go back and pick them up a day or two or a week later. And this is really important because it's not just you who needs a break. Your partner needs a break and the siblings need a break. And, sometimes just having one less kid, there's less arguments. I don't know about your family, but that was ours. So one less kid was always less arguments. Didn't matter which kid it was just less arguments. So think about respite or having a break. I know that it's really hard to drop your kid off with somebody that you don't know and that doesn't know all the things that you know that creates part of this mental load. They don't know that your kid has to have the rug straight. They don't know that they have to have the right socks with no lumps in it. They just don't know that they're only going to eat 2-minute noodles. It's really hard, and I remember very well dropping my son off many times, smiling and waving goodbye, and driving around the corner and crying my eyes out because I felt guilty, I suppose, and I felt bad for dropping him off. And this is one of the heavy loads that we carry as parents, is that sometimes you have to choose between your kids. Choosing something less than great for one kid gives the other kids a break and gives them a chance to do different things. You know, maybe your autistic child is never going to go to the Royal Show. You just wouldn't even contemplate it. But maybe your other kids really, really want to go, and they want to go with mum and dad, or mum and somebody else. Maybe they just really want to go as a family, and it can be really hard because they miss out all the time. No, we can't do that. No, we can't do that. But sometimes this is why respite is really important, because the other kids deserve some of your undivided attention, as well as giving yourself a break and maybe spending some time with your partner or with the family or with a friend that you're just not able to do when you're on 24/7 high alert with your autistic child or children. Yeah, it's hard, but sometimes it pays off in the end. It helps children to develop their independence. They learn that somebody other than mum can help them, and you will be refreshed afterwards. Yeah, you'll feel guilty. Yeah, you might cry, but you're actually going to feel refreshed a little bit. It maybe won't last that long, but this is why you need to schedule in these breaks regularly. It's really important for you and for your family to have a break. So, what my research found was that many mums are ending up with PTSD as a direct result of their kids' behaviour. So, when I did my master's research, I asked over 200 mums, lots of different questions, and it came out that 31% met the criteria to be diagnosed with PTSD simply because of their children's behaviour. We took out all the other factors that might have affected the outcome, and just from their children's challenging and scary behaviours, 31% would have PTSD. Now think about what that's going to do to your nervous system. You're going to be on high alert all the time. You're going to be easily triggered, and it's going to be very hard to keep your nervous system in a state of calm because you're already looking out for the next danger. So this is another reason why it's so important to have a break. The other thing that happens to mums in particular of kids who are autistic, which is much more than any of the other disabilities when they're compared. Yes, other disabilities are difficult, absolutely, and they bring with them their own challenges, particularly for mums of autistic kids. The depression rate and the anxiety rate is much higher, and often it's with good reason. Why wouldn't you be anxious if your kid runs on the road every time you get out of the car? There's plenty to be anxious about. Also, the challenging behaviours are dangerous sometimes. We have to be realistic about this. Sometimes they really are dangerous, and we can't get out of the high alert state that we're in. So stress, anxiety, and depression pop up. And sometimes I wonder if the depression is also about loss, about the loss of the life we thought we would have, the loss of the child we thought we would have, even though we didn't realise it at the time. Probably from a young age, we had hopes and dreams about what our kid would be like, what we would be like as parents, and it just doesn't turn out that way. And we can feel sad and a sense of loss about that and feel depressed about it. And then there's just the physical exhaustion, the fatigue, not getting enough sleep. Maybe you're laying awake worrying, particularly if you've got an NDIS review coming up. You might be laying awake worrying and wondering, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? Lots of parents tell me that they worry, what's going to happen when I'm not here anymore? What's going to happen when I can't look after them anymore? Nobody knows them like I do. Nobody understands my kid the way I do. What's going to happen? And it's a really big worry, and it does keep parents awake at night. And there's also the mental fatigue as well, particularly if you've got ADHD yourself and your kids have got ADHD. You are the holder of all the information, but you're also the one doing all the prompting. Have you got your socks? Have you got your library books? Did you get your lunch? Where's your water bottle? Can't you find your jumper? Don't tell me you've lost another one. You know how it goes. So, oh, brush your teeth. So on and on it goes. And that's very draining because unlike other kids who eventually learn and remember the routines and know what to do, for kids who have ADHD, they don't even remember that they forgot sometimes. They just don't remember. And it feels willful and it feels like they're just being rebellious, but actually they genuinely forget and they do need constant reminders. And this might be somewhere where technology can come in. I mean, kids are so good with that. Maybe you can program something for them to remind them repeatedly instead of you being the one to have to do it. So that's a little bit about the mental load, and I'm sure you can relate to a lot of it. And maybe your situation's slightly different, but generally, mums are carrying a big load, particularly with autistic and ADHD kids. There's a lot to manage. And what we really need is a partner. We don't need someone to help us. What we need is a partner to take some responsibility, not to help us with all the responsibilities or wait for us to tell them what to do. So I hope you found this episode helpful. I'd be really interested to hear what's worked for you. So thanks for listening. I'm Liz Smalley, and I hope you've benefited from this. I look forward to talking to you in the next episode. Bye for now.
Together